Hello and welcome back to my story quarter. I'm actually a little bit shocked to be back here. The first episode was so well received, I just had to record another one for you. So this week we're going to be talking about characters and my thoughts on characters and just going to be talking about characters in general. And so who knows what will happen? Anything can happen. I think writing characters and making characters people is my favorite thing to do. I don't care so much about a story. I mean to me a story is really just writing about what happens between these characters I've got. That's really my favorite kind of stories. I don't know. That's why I kind of have a love-hate relationship with sitcoms, because a lot of times sitcoms can seem just kind of like, it's just lazy writing. And sometimes it is. I think that can be true sometimes. I think when a sitcom is generally well received is when it's not lazy writing, it's just the aspect of, let's just make a bunch of characters and put them in the same room and see what happens. I think Friends is a great example of this. I mean, I don't personally know. Maybe they did have a lot more thought behind it than that. But to me, it felt like they were just like, really the concept of the show is simply, we've got a bunch of weird, crazy friends who all live together. Let's see what happens. What do they do? And I think that's why it's important to let actors, embody their characters. Because if you're legalistic and just say stick to the written character, then that interaction always fails every time. Because as a single person, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of training to be able to perfectly envision human interaction and perfectly capture that interaction. You have to know your characters so well. It requires a level of writing that I don't think I'll ever attain to be able to write that. And so I think it's important to have feedback and input from actors who are portraying characters, because it just makes it more natural. I think that's what made Friends so successful, was these were all phenomenal actors who, they just took their characters and they went places with them. They said they just were actively trying to see how does my character relate with this character, and that's why it was so successful is the characters. For the most part, Friends doesn't have this crazy intuitive plot. It was the characters that made it successful. And I think how relatable the characters were was an important aspect of what made it successful. I think relatable characters are important to have. I think to any degree, any good character has some relatability to them. I think that's what makes good characters. I think that's what makes good villains, is when, to some degree, there is a person in there. I mean, the most just basic and plain and blank villains are the ones that are just some unforeseeable dark force. I mean, think. I know this is a really bad thought for people who love movies or superheroes, but think about the Green Lantern movie, the new one, the one that we don't like to talk about. I'm going to talk about it for a second. The actual villain of that movie. Does anybody even remember the actual villain? It was kind of, and that was one of the big issues of the movie, was it wasn't very specific. The villain was kind of vague. There was one guy who was kind of almost a villain, but you also kind of felt bad for him, but also I don't remember if he died, and that's the part of the problem with the movies. I don't remember most of what happened because there wasn't a reason to remember it. But and then there was some weird thing with some giant cloud villain thing that was going to eat the world or something. I don't know what was going on exactly. It was all pretty confusing. But that's my point, is there wasn't a clear-cut villain that you could really see as a human being, a broken human being. I think that the best villains are simply just that. It's just a very, very broken human being who's been broken to the point to where their understanding of reality and life is so different from us that they do things that we can't comprehend. I think a good example of that is Heath Ledger's Joker. And I know this is everybody, when they're talking about good villain characters and good villain portrayals, Heath Ledger's Joker is going to come up in that conversation, and it's because he did a great job. But yeah, no, I mean, as crazy and ridiculous and outlandish as that Joker was, as a person, I think the thing that made him the most frightening and the most just disturbing was the fact that somewhere deep down you could kind of see that there was a person there, a very broken person, but there was a person, a relatable character somewhere deep beneath, the clown makeup. And that's what makes him truly disturbing, is the fact that to some degree you can kind of relate to his existence. You can kind of relate to his problems to a degree. I mean, some more than others, some a lot less than others maybe, but to some degree he was a relatable character. I don't know, my theory about characters is that people are characters. Every person's a character, and every character therefore should be a person. Maybe not an exact copy of a real person. I think that maybe that's a little bit too labor intensive to try and make sure every character you have is someone you know. But I think to a degree, maybe even just bits and pieces of somebody, someone you knew, when you're writing a character. When you're writing or portraying a character, you kind of have to start from the middle and work out. The middle being wherever your character exists in where you're portraying them, or when you're writing them. For example, I'm writing a story right now. The first things I would focus on are, what does the character do right now, at the beginning? At the beginning of the story, where is my character? Where are they in their life? Who are they right now? How do they act? But if you really want to figure out where a character is going to go, you have to figure out where they started. So, for example, I had this one character who was really a lot like Squidward. I'll use Squidward in my example so I don't go too in depth about my story, because I want to keep a lot of that, secret so that's more surprise. But we'll take Squidward for example. Squidward is at the very beginning of SpongeBob a very basic character. He's just kind of angry at everything. He's not very happy. He's always very sad and very just grumpy. And it's a comedy and a cartoon, so we don't really take everything very seriously. So in the first place, we're not really worrying about where this character came from and where Squidward has been. And I think the things that make Squidward most interesting is when you learn more about his past. I think that, shockingly, there are very human moments in the character of Squidward, which is a funny thing to think about, considering he's a cartoon squid who lives under the sea and serves fast food. But as we learn more about his character, he has episodes where he actually shows some amount of development, and there's human moments where you see why Squidward is the way he is and why he's so sad. It's because he had dreams, and he's in the same way as a villain. He's a broken little squid man who had a dream and lost everything. And to some degree, he's a relatable character, and I think that's part of the successes of SpongeBob is encapsulating that. Now, it being a cartoon and a comedy and overall just very silly, there's not a lot of character development involved, but sometimes when there is that character development involved, that's when something can become so much more attaching. I think that in Gravity Falls, the character development and the growth shown in Dipper is part of what makes the show such a just instant classic as it was. I think it's what made people just grow super attached to the show and the characters, was the way that most of the characters developed. A good example of how not to do that actually exists in the same show. I think that Mabel Pines, Mabel was such a great character to begin with. She had her flaws, but every good character has flaws. Nobody wants a character with no flaws. No, people don't always know that, but when a character has absolutely no flaws, they're just not relatable, and they're not very fun to watch. But the problem with Mabel was that Mabel didn't ever really have any growth. She just had the same problems throughout the entirety of the series, and they were never really addressed. She never really seemed to grow, and I'm not sure why that is. I don't know. I won't pretend I know. I can guess. I can make guesses as to why Mabel stayed the same. Maybe it was I don't know, maybe it was Alex Hirsch talking about how some people don't change. Some people will constantly have the same issues for a long time. And obviously there's still time for Mabel to, change, considering she's still, 13 at the end of the show, and she hasn't died yet. But to some degree, it was a little frustrating to watch her struggle with things and never really go past them. She just constantly needed her brother to make sacrifices for her, and I don't know. It bothered me. It bothered other people. But maybe to some degree that's part of her character. Maybe that's part of the lesson to be had there, was that Dipper didn't need to continue making sacrifices for her. He'd already sacrificed so much. And he was willing to continue sacrificing for her. And maybe Mabel did need to change, but at the same time, maybe that was just showing how much Dipper really did care about her, was that even though she constantly was making him sacrifice for her, he was continually willing to. So even in the flaws in character writing, there can be, little bits of redemption. Because although maybe Mabel's character was stagnant at the end of the show, to some degree that just fleshed out Dipper's character even more, because he continued to make sacrifices for his sister. Some of my favorite characters to think about are mentor characters. I think a great mentor character, and something I've been watching recently, the anime Mob Psycho 100. If you're into anime at all and you haven't already been recommended that show, which I could not believe if you hadn't, go watch it. It's got 12 episodes right now, and it's really good. It's super artsy, but at the same time it's not one of those only artsy animes. I'd say it's got a little bit for everybody. I don't want to give anything away, but overall it's got some really nice aesthetics, really good art, and just really good story and characters. It's a fun show. I don't watch a lot of anime, and I don't like watching subbed anime, but this is an anime that I would say is good enough that I will watch it with subtitles. So if you're at all into anime, even in the slightest, or if you're into good characters or good animation, good aesthetics in animation, I would definitely check out Mob Psycho 100. There's a lot to be found there, and I'm not going to be able to cover all of it anyway. But one thing I would like to talk about is just Mob's master, or his teacher, Reagan, or however you pronounce his name. That's part of the issue, is I don't know how to pronounce anything in that show because I'm too busy reading rather than listening to the Japanese that I won't understand anyways. But Reagan is a really well fleshed out character. Throughout the show, he's there. And the best part about Reagan is he's so not giving out too much. He's a con man. He cons people. But at the same time, as he's conning people, he is actually helping people. He runs sort of this spirit exorcism office, and he enlists Mob's help. Mob is working for him there. Mob's a psychic and actually has powers and can exorcise spirits really, really effortlessly. Whereas Reagan, he just kind of he doesn't help people with actual spirits. When other people have problems that they blame on spirits, he fixes the problems in other ways. While keeping up the ruse that he's actually helping them with spirits, he does things like aromatherapy and massages to just kind of help them with their stress. And so, although he's not straightforward with people all the time, he is actually legitimately trying to help them. And, in fact, although he doesn't know anything about, psychic powers or any of that, he still tries his best to help Mob with what he can. He teaches Mob that he can't use his powers to hurt people. And he teaches Mob that even though he has these powers, he's not different from anybody else. It doesn't make him any less or more human. And I think what makes Reagan's character so lovable is he is broken. He does have his flaws. He's a con man. He cons people out of their money and lies to people, but at the same time, he is trying to help people. And I'm interested to see where the series goes with him, because there's still a lot of unresolved things between him and Mob, and I'll try not to give any more away than I already have. But overall, he's a really well-written character, and if you're into well-written characters, if you want some good examples of well-written characters, Mob Psycho 100 is a really, really good show to watch for that. It's phenomenal. I love the show. Absolutely love it. Mob Psycho 100 is written by the same person who wrote One Punch Man. One Punch Man's an interesting thing when it comes to characters. One of my favorite characters from One Punch Man is Moomin Rider. He's a fairly small character, but essentially, to give you some background, the One Punch Man universe it's kind of comparable to the Marvel universe, in which there's just all kinds of superheroes everywhere, and there's this organization that tries to organize the superheroes, and essentially how it works is the superheroes have to sign up, and there's different rankings, there's different tiers, levels of superheroes. There's C ranking, B ranking, A, and then the top level is S. And depending on the level of the threat that's occurring, different heroes will be called in. And Moomin Rider is at the top of the C ranking. He tops the leaderboard for C ranking for as far as the show has progressed at this point, other than a minor exception, which I won't get into. But so he is the best of the worst, as it were. Now there's some crazy powerful superheroes in this universe, and he is not one of them. For the most part, Moomin Rider, at least as far as we know at the time, is just a normal guy with a bike, with a bicycle, and some bicycle pads and a helmet, and he just wants to help people. And I think Moomin Rider is probably one of my favorite characters in anything, because there are instances in the show in which there is this unsurmountable threat, this threat so powerful that even S-level heroes, the best of the best heroes, are running away. They just refuse to fight this thing because they can't take it. And in a moment of dire circumstance, this monster is attacking this safety shelter that's supposed to be able to keep it out and help all the people hide from it, but it doesn't work very well. He just kind of opens it up like a tin can and just hops right in there. And Moomin Rider, this entire time, is going towards the center of where all these monsters are at. He's going into the heat of things, into the thick of things, even though he's not really that capable. And while they're waiting for more S heroes to arrive to actually be able to take this thing out, he pretty much sacrifices himself and fights this thing head on just to buy time for everybody. And I think, and to a degree, this is a parody. One Punch Man is a complete parody of anime tropes and all of that. And Moomin Rider, through this parody, actually ends up being one of my favorite characters in anime, and it's for this reason. Characters in anime, especially protagonists, are always super just confident. Like, they're like, I can do this, even though it looks like they can't. And the thing about Moomin Rider is, he actually can't. He has nothing going for him. He has a bike. He has a bike, and he's trying to fight these huge monsters that actual, like, super mutant heroes cannot take on. But at the same time, he knows this. He knows that he's not going to win, but he fights anyways, because it's not about whether or not he can actually win. It's about whether, if he could save just one person in the time that he buys by fighting this monster and distracting him. And I get so adamant about this, and maybe it's a silly thing to be adamant about, but that's the beauty of characters, is there's these characters, and you might not know it when you're writing a character. You might be writing a character just because they have a minor role to fill. They're just this placeholder. There's someone who needs to say something right here, and this is them. But who knows? Maybe this character that you're writing might just be someone's favorite. And I think that's a good enough reason to make every character a good one, because you never know who's going to enjoy a character. Well, that about wraps up the time that we have this week. I want to thank you all for listening. The amount of support I've been getting over this is overwhelming. It just makes me so happy to see your guys' comments, and I'd love to see some discussion, maybe questions even. I'd love to know what you guys want to hear more of. I don't know where to go with this, honestly. It's really just wherever I feel like, and whatever you guys want. I'd love to just take a week to talk about something you guys have, or maybe look into some series that I haven't seen, or talk about some characters I've never heard of before. I think that this would be a great opportunity just to have some discussion. I love talking about stories, and so being able to use this as an output for that is a really good thing for me to have. I just want to, again, thank you all for listening, and I hope to see more of this. I hope to make more of this. As long as you guys keep listening, I'll keep talking. Have a nice day.